I was 29 years old when I first experienced an anxiety attack. And if it weren't for the intervention of my dad, it could have easily been the end. But even after the attack, that experience altered my perspective on life, and I had to figure out how to put myself back together. And it would take years to recover from that and to be able to grasp its meaning, as well as just how I can possibly be at peace and happy again. Oh, and while I feel like I'm still a work in progress, and I'm constantly progressing from that experience, and I'm constantly processing old and new experiences, there have been several key lessons that I've learned from it. And one of them was how some simple habits can not only stop the trauma from these kinds of events, but it can also help you to heal from it and kind of create some buffer to prevent it from ever happening again. So today I want to share with you 5 simple habits that have helped me to recover from and find meaning from that suffering, as well as to eventually just rediscover joy in my own personal journey. And those simple habits are journaling, meditation, budgeting my money, and then daily and weekly planning, as well as reading 15 minutes a day and then exercising. And my hope is that these habits are as helpful to you as they have been to me. So real quick, I just want to give some context from my experience, so that way hopefully you can take it and use it for your own if you're dealing with anything of this sort. So for me, my anxiety attack was not the result of just one thing. And from my perspective, I've noticed that they can be kind of summed up into 2 areas. One of them was just rooted in my identity and my personality. And then the other area was just the circumstances and how I viewed that set of circumstances that kind of just created the stress and the pressure that inevitably caused the snap, if you will. And so on the internal side, I've always had something of an attached and anxious personality. I've always been a bit of a people pleaser, but at the same time, I can be very competitive. Anyone who knows me well knows that I have just a natural desire to be the bestest with the mostest, if you know what I mean. Especially back then when I was 29 years old and when all of this happened, I had a very hard time reining in this competitiveness. And I was also very good at putting on a facade. So rarely did anybody know that I was struggling with anything. And to be honest, I still tend to be a guarded person. And on top of this, I didn't exactly have the best mindset when it comes to mental health before the attack. I didn't really understand it. I wasn't very favorable or understanding towards other people who had been through stuff. I had just always kind of had that old-fashioned mindset of just put a smile on, tough it up, and keep going. But it wasn't until this event happened that I realized that this was a real thing. And then put on top of all of this that there were some pretty heavy external pressures that I was dealing with. I had 3 back-to-back failed relationships that were in pretty quick succession. I was also not very good with my money, and I was in dire financial straits at the time. And I was trying to recover from that financial pressure by doing what I knew best, which was door-to-door sales. And I had gone back to that where I knew I could make some pretty good money pretty quickly. And on top of all of this happened on what was already starting out as a rough day. And then as I got into work, I started knocking in some neighborhoods that had already been knocked pretty early in the season. And the neighbors weren't exactly thrilled that I was coming back again, or that other door knockers were coming back again. And then I had, as the day went on, just 2 really rough interactions with some of the people in that neighborhood on the doors that just were not happy about a door-to-door sales guy. And I think they could sense that I was a little bit weakened and not exactly at the top of my form. They smelled some blood in the water, if you will, and they let me have it. And I was shaken up from that, and I knew it. I was aware that something wasn't right. And so I stepped away for a little bit, just to try to clear my head, go use the bathroom, get out of the neighborhood. And I was in a Home Depot parking lot when just everything went sideways. And yeah, it was rough. And that was my experience. Not pleasant. And like I said, my dad was huge. It's clutch. But again, it wasn't one thing that set this off. It was a lot all at once, and it layered on top of itself. And one of the things that I've realized from this experience is that not only are these layers often the cause of the issue, but they can also be just as powerful in healing and in overcoming these kinds of challenges and actually rebuilding back to where we were before, or even stronger. And that's really what I want to share today, is that these 5 habits operate as a positive layer set to help guard and heal from these kinds of experiences. And while these habits didn't immediately change my circumstances, they did lead me to the process that helped me to become a version of me that I'm actually now quite proud of, if I'm being honest. And I'll also be honest, I still have a ways to go. But these 5 habits really helped me to change my course. And so the first one here is journaling. And to be honest, journaling has taken the shape over a bunch of different ways over the years. I actually first began journaling in 2008, back when I was 19 years old. And at the time, it just started off as a very simple daily gratitude journal. And I was able to hold on to that habit for about a year and a half while serving as a full-time missionary for my church. Then it was on and off again throughout most of my college years. It's the same exact principle, really, just making gratitude entries at the end of the day. And I even continued some of this through my door-to-door days, my early door-to-door days. And it was incredibly powerful, even in those early stages, because just frankly, the power of gratitude and being able to see just these small, tender moments in your life has a very profound impact and can really change your perspective. But it wasn't really until I transitioned to something that I refer to now as what's in the box that it really began to have an exponential increase in the rate of my healing. And it stacked really well with some of the stuff that I had been doing in my early journal days. But after reading Ryan Holiday's book, Stillness is the Key, I realized that I actually had been leaving a lot of meat on the bone with this particular activity. And so what I ended up doing was I actually introduced another layer to my journal process. I kept the gratitude portion, but then I started to just think of like an open form expression. And I actually picked up a kind of a suggestion from Steven Pressfield that he picked up from comedians that they use in their training that's called What's in the Box. And what in the box is it's a very simple training technique that a lot of stand-up comics and improv comics will use. They basically work together in a group and they pass each other an invisible imaginary box. And there's really only one rule in this process, and it's that the box is never empty. And they just have to improv and work with whatever's inside of there. And in a similar way, I took that and used it in my journaling. Basically, I created an open space inside of my journal, and I would just fill out whatever was top of mind. And again, there wasn't really a right or a wrong way to this concept. The only rule is just that you just put something down. So I just wrote whatever was on top of my head. Definitely wasn't always insightful and rarely profound, but it eventually ended up becoming really my best outlet for some of my creative work. Because at the end of the day, I wasn't really trying to judge what I was putting on paper. I was just putting stuff out there and putting stuff into a private space that I felt like I could commune with. And it just so happened that some of my better creative thoughts ended up coming from this, but it was because I wasn't really trying to. I was simply just expressing what I was feeling, how I was processing things, and that really accelerated my healing process. And it ended up being a creative work as well that allowed deeper ponderings to just kind of naturally rise to the surface, but those ended up really only being byproducts, not really the intent. And I just want to emphasize here that there's no right or wrong way to journal. Just do what comes natural to you. One of the big things that I'm a big fan of is just start with what you have. Open a notes section on your phone. You can do pen and paper. I've done both. I actually recently went from writing to typing, and now I'm going back to writing because that just works better for me. There's something about the concept of just taking my time, pen and paper, really, and just letting it slowly work its way out of my brain. And that slowness sometimes helps me to just process things clearer. The second habit is actually really closely related to this though, and it's meditation. This is the one that I ended up picking up on the spot during those anxiety attacks. At the time, I had a coworker whose name was Nick, and Nick gave me the suggestion to just try meditation. And I'll be honest, at this point, I didn't really know much about meditation. As a matter of fact, I knew almost nothing about it, but I had also been kind of closed-minded to it. I wasn't really a fan of concepts that came from other faiths, religions, and philosophies. I was very closed-minded. But one of the major blessings from this experience was that it forced me to open up to these other schools of wisdom and philosophy and see the value that was in them. Not because my faith in Christ was lacking. I actually still had quite a strong faith in Christ and leaned on him heavily at this time. But I also realized that I had to do my part. I had to do the things that were just required of me to be successful and to take care of my mental health. One of the things that became clear to me is I just can't leave things up to chance. I couldn't just leave it up to him. His grace is sufficient, but he asks us to work. He asks us to do things, whether keeping his commandments or making promises with him. I just knew that I wasn't doing my part to maintain my mental health, and I could feel it in my bones. And so I was willing at this point to look to any and all sources of potential guidance and inspiration that really opened me up and helped me to get control of my situation and learn these skills that were taught by ancient philosophies that were super powerful. Because for me, for weeks after this experience, months even, it felt like there were anxiety aftershocks. Nothing quite as strong or as potent as that first one, but again, I was in door-to-door sales and not exactly a stress-free environment. And so it wouldn't take too rough of a customer to where I could start to trigger that aftershock. And so I had to have a way to quickly settle myself. And meditation became that way for me. 3, 5, 10 minutes, didn't really matter. Like sometimes it all varied, but it was a way for me to just recenter myself and calm down and kind of stop the bleeding in the moment, if you will. And I continued this practice for months. I've been on and off with meditation at points. There have also been 6-month periods where I've only done it 2 or 3 times a week, and also periods where I haven't done it for an entire month. And so again, I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it, and I'm not saying that you have to do every single one of these every day. Although I will say the more you can layer and stack together, the better off you will be. It's been my experience. But start with what you have. Go from there. Do what you can. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, doesn't matter. I'm able to do 20 minutes now. I've been able to work up to that, but I definitely didn't start there. I started at 3 minutes, and then I slowly got to 5, and then I got to 10. And then I stayed at 10 for a really long time. But the point of meditation, and I can't make this clearly enough, the whole point of meditation is to just examine your thoughts and understand their source. Just to be able to acknowledge where they're coming from and then just let them go. And the metaphor that I have grown to like the most with this is that thoughts are like smells. Some are pleasant, some are pretty rough, if I'm being honest, and some you don't even notice at all until you stop to notice. But in every case, you smell it, you acknowledge it, and then you just let it pass right on by, right? It can be a fart in the wind, good or bad. It could be perfume, right? It doesn't really matter. But we just need to learn to acknowledge and let them go. And for me, the major benefit to this is I've just been able to recognize when I've metaphorically stepped into a pile of crap, and when I've also been able to recognize the fact that I'm lying in a bed of roses. And it helps me to just slow down and recognize both the good and the bad moments, recognize the sources, and make the according adjustments, even if it's just simply savoring the moment or cleaning my shoes. So this third habit is super practical. It's not exactly what you would refer to as like a spiritual thought process or a cleansing thought process, but it's been immensely stress relieving because it comes down to budgeting money, right? I will be perfectly honest here. I am a notorious spender and I have been for a long time. It's taken me a while to accept that. But one of the things that occurred during this process, I realized that spending was an emotional outlet for me. It was a way for me to distract myself from pain, fear, or any stress. And learning that, I've realized that this is something that I have to guard against constantly. And I know that some of this came from just the way that I grew up and also having a competitive nature. I'm just as guilty as anybody is trying to keep up with the Joneses. And I've always been a little hesitant as well to stop and to stare at the numbers. My solution to most spending problems is to make more money. And while I got very good at that, I was terrible at holding on to the money. And I was kind of just pouring cash out just as fast as I can make it. And I'll be honest, I had to get some help here. I needed accountability groups to help hold me accountable. And I was very fortunate to get into a very good one. So over time, one of the things that we did as a group is we would just rotate taking turns walking through our finances and our financial goals. And just gonna say it how it is, when it became my turn, my boys ripped me apart. I'm gonna say this also, they were real friends and they let me have it. Good friends tell you how it is. And these guys loved me enough to rip me a new one whenever I was making stupid financial choices because they knew I needed it. And frankly, I hated it, but I knew I needed it. And on top of that, because my work at the time was super seasonal, I felt a deep sense of scarcity around money because I would really make 90% of my annual income between the months of April and September. So I was basically constantly alternating between a season of plenty and then a season of scrimping and saving to get by. And when I couldn't budget, I was stressed to the hilt because I couldn't keep up with my day-to-day expenses. I hadn't really learned how to control my appetite and my stress, and I hadn't learned to connect the dots between the two. And it wasn't until I learned to connect the dots that I realized that I had to come to terms with what was really just crippling anxiety around my financial freedom, and that having toys and working for the golden handcuffs was a completely debilitating lifestyle and mindset. And then as I looked at my cash flow and sat down with my guys and they held me accountable week in and week out, month to month, I was able to establish a plan and stick with it. And because of that accountability from my friends, it made the job a little bit easier and gave me just enough momentum to really start to melt the stress away by establishing a plan and establishing a savings habit. And the next habit here is closely related because just as important as budgeting your money, you also need to be able to budget and plan your time. And one of the reasons I have found this particular habit to be so relieving and helping me to overcome my anxiety attacks is because, of course, it does relieve the stress by being able to know what I'm planning for. But more importantly, it causes me to check in with my goals on a regular basis. Daily and weekly planning, when it's done with intention and when it's centered around your goals, helps you to not only accomplish more, but it also helps you to stay focused on what matters most. This includes everything from taking care of your family, taking care of your finances, taking care of your health, but it's just about every kind of life objective, right? Because here's the thing that you have to realize. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. And just like reviewing a financial budget, you have to look at how you spend your time. So I invite you to do that right now. Consider what are the actual things that you're doing every single day? How much TV are you watching? How much time are you in the gym? How much time are you at work? How much time are you asleep? Take into account your time and see where there's potential for you to improve and to get yourself closer to your goals. Because one of the things that I learned in this process is that when I sat down to do my weekly planning sessions, it was a beautiful opportunity on a Sunday or a Saturday to be able to just reflect on my big project goals. Like, what are the things that I'm striving to become and to do in the next 3 years? And then I could work backwards from there. And I could see, oh, if I'm going to hit this target in 3 years, then in the next year, I have to make sure I do this, right? If I'm going to get down to a 8% body fat and at the same time be able to bench 225 pounds, I need to make sure that this year I'm down to like around 12% body fat and I can put up around 185 pounds. And I'm just kind of making up some numbers here on the spot, so just give me some slack. But again, it just helped me to review and to create context around what I was trying to accomplish. So look at how you're spending your time and reflect forwards on what you're trying to accomplish. And then work from that point backwards to where you are now to identify the single tasks that you need to be doing today and this week in order to get you closer to that goal. So I'm telling you right now, please, begging you, what is it that you're doing with your life? What in your day actually matters to you? What's the highlight? What's the low point? Is there anything there that you love? Or is there anything there that you can do without, right? Are there things in your life that you're wasting your time on because they're distractions, they're escapes that are just helping you to numb the pain of not living the dream life that you want to have? Because once you understand what your goals are, you can start living with that kind of intention and actively working every single day towards your goals. And you'll find that not only does the pain and the stress of that dissatisfaction go away, but the rewards of the achievements start to come in, right? And you begin to work to become something that you're proud of, and you can begin to plan with intention to do something that matters to you. And when you know what matters to you, you know what you need to become. You have an idea of what you need to do next. And that leads me into this next habit, which is just this habit of learning. It's simply reading 15 minutes a day. That's the simple version. But finding a way to learn every single day, because when you realize that you are going to accomplish X, Y, or Z, and you don't know how to do that, you have to find a way to figure that out, right? Most of the time, I know for myself anyway, that when I realized I had to learn something new, I didn't normally have the money to go and purchase a $3,000 course or a $1,000 course or even a $500 course, especially when I was being monitored and budgeting and having accountability, right? Whether that accountability is your wife or it's a group like it was for me, right? You've got to be frugal. You've got to be smart. You've got to be intentional. And at the same time, what I did realize is that I still had the responsibility to learn. And so what I could do was I could afford a $20 book where everything that an expert or an author knew was distilled into 200 pages or whatever their subject matter was, and it was all there. And all I had to do was show up and read for 15 minutes. And that grew, right? Now I read about 30 to 60 minutes a day, but you start where you are. And for me, that started out with audiobooks, right? When I was multitasking. This wasn't perfect, I wasn't focused, but it was somewhere where I could start. And then over time, as I got good and as I was learning, I realized I was missing things. I was like, oh, there are gaps that just aren't connecting the dots. And so to get better at my learning, I progressed to just monotasking, sitting down to read. And then from there, I was able to add on Ryan Holiday and Robert Greene's system for note-taking and developing content, right? And that made it just more manageable for me to be able to focus and to study and to learn and to just really dive deep into the content so that way I could then go and teach that content sufficiently. And I knew that when I could teach the content, I was also ready to take action on the content. And I would still take action even when I didn't know what the hell I was doing, because frankly, that's the best way to learn. Groups and friends make it easy to do that. Start a book club, right? Make it a game, see how many pages you can read in a day, right? And then similar to like working out, start with a low weight and then work up, right? Start with 10 minutes, 5 minutes, right? 2 minutes, whatever you can do, just go up from there, right? And this is something that I wish I had found earlier, just a little bit of a life hack, really. Read biographies. I'm not kidding, right? These are the wisest people on earth. Like, what are you doing skipping over their wisdom, right? Do you think you're that unique as to somebody who's gone before you, who hasn't faced a similar challenge and a similar problem, and that they haven't solved it? And so spend time learning from the people who know how to do the things that you want to do. And here's the way to make this as easy as possible, right? Start with the things that you're already interested in, where it's just the next step forward. So for me, one of the ways that I made this easy is I was very curious to learn about Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill had a huge career, created so much content. He was a master publisher of work. He produced volumes and volumes and volumes. Some of it too much, some of it not completely refined, but he was a master producer. And then on top of that, I love World War II history. And so I was just naturally curious to understand how Churchill was able to create all of this content while at the same time balancing his political life and building homes and painting paintings. Like, the man just pumped out content left, right, and center in so many different fields. And so I started with Winston. He was my first biography and I loved it. It was such a hack in life. I felt like I gained decades of wisdom and knowledge by just spending some time with good old Churchill. The man was a fountain of genius and knowledge and perspective. And while he wasn't perfect, he had his quirks. He was touched by the gift of madness. I can't tell you how much he blessed my life in having his record. And if you want to go take a look at it, the series that I read was called The Last Lion. It's by William Manchester. Super good. Strongly recommend it. And I can't stress this enough. Like, how on earth will you ever become the person that you want to become when you don't know where to go next? Who are you going to learn from that's going to teach you this, right? Because there are people who have done this before and they've done it splendidly. They've made some mistakes that you can learn from if you just go and read their stuff, but you can skip the heartache and get the results that they already worked for just by doing the things that they've already done and using the systems, the habits, and the processes combined with today's technology that allow us to move forward. And just as we need to fill our minds with good potential content in order to keep moving forward, we also need to find a way to, at times, take a break from our minds. You need to find something that will get you moving, and you need to get some exercise. Because frankly, anxiety's roots is in our minds, it's in our brains. And we think, especially those of us who are ambitious and creative, we think a ton. We are thinkers, we are dreamers and planners. Our minds do not rest, and we need a way to still the mind and get into the body, because the mind will follow the body. And if you can find a way to exercise your body so that way it directs the mind into a positive way, whether that's as simple as going for a walk or actually getting into the gym or getting into a pool or doing yoga, just again, find something that you enjoy, and you will find that it relieves your mind and it detaches you from the thoughts and the concepts that are most troublesome. And you will find practical applications by exercising your body that apply to your mind to give it the rest that it needs, and to also feed it with the right endorphins and stimulus to keep it moving in the right direction, especially on the hard days. And if there's a theme to this video, it's start where you are, and it's find something you enjoy as you start these habits. Because for me, just a really simple example, when I was younger, like 21, 22, I thought it would be kind of a good idea to say that I was a marathon runner, right? When in all reality, I hate running, okay? And just this concept of being able to say, oh, I was a marathon runner, I ran this marathon, look at me, look how great I am. Nonsense, right? I couldn't hack it. It didn't matter to me enough. It didn't matter enough to me for me to stick with it, because I was only in it for the reward. And I maybe lasted a month. I'm still not 100% sure. And I just couldn't hack it. But what I could hack was I could chase a basketball. I could chase a football or a frisbee. And so I engaged in sports. That's how I got going. And then as time went on and I went through this experience with my anxiety attacks, one of the things that I found was that I had lost touch with my body. I had lost touch with my identity as an athlete, and I had just lost the habit of exercise. And so as I was coming back into this process, I knew I had to figure something out. And because of my long injury history, I didn't think I had a ton of lifespan left in me as an athlete playing basketball. Don't get me started on my injury history here. I had to find a different way to get the exercise and to strain my muscles. And so one day I just decided to go get a personal trainer because I was really, frankly, terrified of a barbell and free weights. And it really took me 2 personal trainers to really kind of find somebody to work with. But that personal trainer helped me to find an accountability partner, and they also helped me to develop a system that I was comfortable with and to start to develop the confidence with the barbell and to just be safe inside of a gym. And then over time, my trainer introduced me to the concept of CrossFit. And I had heard of CrossFit, but I had also heard it was frankly pretty extreme. And there was something to that. I definitely wasn't cut out for CrossFit at the time, but he recommended that I go to a specific gym. And it also happened to be a gym that one of my other good friends went to. And so I went with him, my good friend, Bryce. Shout out to you, Bryce. And that got me going. And one of the things that I found was that CrossFit made it easy for me because obviously I was going with my buddy Bryce, but one of the other major benefits was I didn't really have to think a ton about the process of coming to CrossFit. One of the things that CrossFit did for me was it eliminated all of the things that made working out difficult for me. It eliminated having to worry about what I was going to do once I got to the gym. It eliminated not having friends to go to the gym with. And also because of the competitive kind of gamification nature of most CrossFit classes, I was able to be focused on not so much the work itself, but kind of get lost in the workout and the competitive environment that is CrossFit. And all of that combined to make it so that way CrossFit eliminated all of the downside of going to the gym and increased the upside of making friends, having a good time, and getting healthier along the way and just having a good sweat. The key though is to start where you are, get your heart rate up, find something that you enjoy, and take care of yourself. And you will feel better, I promise. Don't judge yourself for your activities. Just enjoy it. Find passion in the journey. And what you will find is that by focusing on that journey and putting one foot in front of the other, you will start to enjoy what's called the infinite game of life. And this begins to really happen most of the time without anybody noticing. And that's the beauty of habits. That's the beauty of the infinite game. Because once you engage in that mode, you're not doing these habits for results, but for the joy of doing them. These habits are the things that our lives are made of. These habits are enlightening. They are fulfilling. They are uplifting. Because when I was falling apart in that parking lot, and there were moments in there where I just didn't know what was happening, and I felt like I would rather be dead. Literally, I had lost sight of that infinite game. I was so fixated on the finite game of trying to have all of the material possessions and doing all of these other things that I felt like were expected of me by other people, that I had lost sight of my journey. The result of that was ugly. It was messy. And if you're watching this video and you've gotten to this point, it's probably miserable for you too. And I feel for you. And I think a lot of us feel that way. I feel for you. To be honest, I struggled to wrap up this video last time. And at the same time, I ran out of time in the library while trying to figure out how to wrap up this video. I also ran out of memory space on my card. But all that to say, like, if you've made it to this point in the video, I'm pretty sure life has either hit you pretty hard in the past or it's hit you pretty hard recently. Life hits hard. That's just the fact of life. But you have to learn how to be able to handle those hits, and you have to know where to put that pain and how to be able to pick yourself up and to, instead of taking those hits personally, kind of receive them as a feedback system and just see that these pain points, these anxiety points, rather than over identifying with them, which is something that I struggled with and I still catch myself struggling with. It takes a lot of reminders and these habits for me to be able to consistently maintain the fact that these moments of extreme pain and difficulty, they're just feedback. I don't want to take away these emotions. We just want to tame them, right? We don't want to kill the horse. We want to tame the horse. These emotions are incredible assets and very powerful, and they can help us connect and show real empathy with other people. And that's really one of the joys of life is, yeah, there are these really sucky moments that drag you down to the gulf of despair, to quote the scripture. But it's also those moments that allow us to empathize with others and to help them come back from that despair. And so we are not given these moments just to make us suffer, but rather to give us empathy for others and to also help us to grow and to learn from these moments. Just remember that this entire process is an iterative one. It's a very cyclical one. We are going to end up needing to repeat the strategies and the systems that we've used in the past to make progress. And so to use a favorite quote that I've grown to love from a meditation teacher of mine is, we're not starting over when we have to go back and reestablish these habits, but rather we are making progress with an earlier technique. And so I've grown to love that. And that's really what habits are all about, is we are making progress with earlier techniques, fundamental techniques that we use regularly. And so I invite you to look at it that way and try to choose these habits out of a desire to make them sustainable and to enjoy the process and to use them to learn from these really difficult and painful experiences. It's not always easy, and I've been fortunate to be able to have a tremendous amount of support and counsel and advice and mentors and books to learn from, so that way I can learn how to build myself out of these really, really tight emotional situations. But these habits were a crucial tool in that process. And so I hope they're helpful for you.